Hello, my name is Calvin Draper. I'm 34 years old, single, and currently working as a doctor at Tenova Healthcare Harton in Toma, Tennessee. A quiet, small town nestled among lush green hills and winding roads that stretch like ribbons of silk. Toma isn't as bustling as big cities. It has serene streets lined with old oak trees, charming little coffee shops where locals gather to chat, and sunsets that blaze red as if the entire sky is on fire. I love this place, not just for its beauty, but because it's where I found the meaning of my life, and also where I lost the most important person to me. Today, I'm sitting in my small apartment with sunlight streaming through the window onto my desk, where I'm scrolling through my phone. A sudden Facebook notification pops up, pulling me out of my endless train of thought. It's an old memory, a photo. It's me and my grandmother, Hazel Draper, standing at the Atlanta airport, both of us beaming with smiles. I was an 18-year-old kid, lanky with messy hair, hugging her tightly, a petite woman with snow-white hair and a gentle smile. But looking at the photo, my heart feels like it's being squeezed. That memory isn't just a moment. It's a deep, searing wound that still stings even after 16 years. That was the day everything in me changed. The day I realized my family wasn't what I had always believed it to be. I put the phone down, close my eyes, and the memories come rushing back. I don't want them to, but they come anyway, like crashing waves pulling me back to those old years. The days when I thought I understood family, love, and connection. I'm telling this story not to point fingers or place blame, but to answer a question that even I sometimes don't dare to face. I was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, a lively city with industrial districts and a relentless pace of life. My father, Gordon Draper, was an engineer, always busy with blueprints and construction projects. My mother, Janelle, was an accountant, perpetually buried in numbers and invoices. Our family wasn't poor, but it was never warm either. I don't doubt that my parents loved each other, but their love didn't seem to extend to me. They were busy, always busy. The rare family dinners were quiet, filled only with the clinking of cutlery against plates and a few perfunctory questions. How were your final exams, Calvin? Or, what's your class rank? I answered briefly, knowing they weren't really waiting for my response. But there was one place where I truly felt alive, where I felt loved, my grandmother's house in Toma, Tennessee. Every summer, I was sent there, and those were the best months of my childhood. My grandmother, Hazel Draper, was a petite but strong woman. She had been a nurse, working long night shifts at the local hospital. She had divorced when my father was young, raising him and his sister, Aunt Paula, on her own with simple meals and sleepless nights. She never complained, but I could see the sacrifices etched in the wrinkles on her face, in the gentle yet profound look in her eyes. My grandmother's house was on the outskirts of Toma, a small wooden home with a porch full of flowers and a backyard garden where she grew all sorts of things: tomatoes, beans, and vibrant yellow marigolds. Every time I stepped into her house, I was greeted by the smell of freshly baked cookies, the scent of old wood from the floors, and a faint trace of antiseptic, a remnant of her years as a nurse. She always welcomed me with a tight hug, even though I'd been taller than her since I was 12. "Calvin, you're growing so fast I can barely keep up," she teased. But her eyes sparkled as if I were her entire world. Those summer days at her house were paradise. She taught me how to bake cookies, told me stories about her youth, her night shifts, the patience she saved, and the times she snuck bites of bread in the hospital break room. She laughed heartily, her voice clear and bright. But sometimes when she thought I wasn't watching, I'd see her sitting by the window, staring into the distance, her hand gently tracing the edge of a family photo frame. In that frame were my father, Aunt Paula, and me. But she rarely spoke of my father or aunt. I was too young to understand why. I only knew that she loved us, even though we were rarely there for her. My father, after graduating college, became an engineer and moved to Greenville. He married my mother, and they built a stable life, at least on the surface. Aunt Paula, my father's sister, married Leon Mallister, a wealthy man in real estate, and they moved to Peachtree City, Georgia, a far more upscale place than Toma. She had 2 children, Isabel and James, my cousins whom I only saw a few times during holidays. Both my father and Aunt Paula left, leaving my grandmother alone in her small wooden house. They rarely visited, only calling on Christmas or Thanksgiving. Brief, polite calls devoid of warmth. At my grandmother's house, the walls were lined with framed photos of her children and grandchildren. She dusted them carefully as if they were treasures. But her eyes, when she looked at those photos, always carried a hint of sadness, as if she were waiting for something that would never come. I didn't understand it then. I just thought she missed her family. I didn't realize that their indifference had been eating away at her heart for years. My grandmother lived alone, but I never heard her complain. She tended her garden, rode her old bicycle to the market, and cooked simple meals in her small kitchen. I remember those summer afternoons when I helped her weed or water the plants, and she would tell me stories about her days as a nurse. Back then, I'd run around the hospital, sometimes not sleeping all night, she said, her voice full of pride. But every time I saved someone, it made all the exhaustion worthwhile. I admired her, not just for her strength, but for the way she loved people, an unconditional love, even when she received so little in return. It was the same with her children. She sacrificed her youth and prime years to raise my father and Aunt Paula. Yet, she never once asked for or demanded financial support from them, nor did she request they buy her this or that. I was young, not mature enough to fully understand, but I sensed the unfairness. Every time I visited her, I saw her gentle smile, but there was always a distant look in her eyes, as if she were waiting for a phone call, a hug, or just a sincere word of care. I tried to make up for it in my own way, helping her in the garden, listening to her stories, or simply sitting with her on the porch watching the sunset. But I knew no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fill the void left by my father and Aunt Paula. Everything began to change in the spring when I was 18, just after graduating high school. I was in Greenville preparing for my last summer break before college. One evening, my parents called me into the living room, the atmosphere unusually serious. "Calvin, we're planning a big trip," my father began, his voice brimming with excitement. "The whole family is going to Europe, Paris, Rome, London. A once-in-a-lifetime trip." My mother nodded, adding, "It'll include Aunt Paula, Uncle Leon, Isabel, and James, and of course your grandmother." My heart raced as I listened. Europe. I had never left the United States, and the thought of going with my grandmother thrilled me beyond words. I imagined her standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, her smile as radiant as in those old photos, or sitting on a boat in Venice, sharing stories about her nursing days. It would be a perfect gift for her, the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for our family. But then I overheard my mother mention that the trip was expensive and they were asking my grandmother to contribute financially. "She has savings from her nursing days," my mother said, her tone soft but calculated. "She'll want to help since it's a family trip." I felt uneasy but brushed it off. I thought if Grandma agreed, she must want this trip to happen. Naively, I believed everyone wanted her to be happy, that this was a chance for the family to bond and make up for the years she spent alone. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a strange shift in how the family treated my grandmother. My father started calling her more often, his voice sweeter than I was used to. "How's Mom doing?" "Eating well." "I'm thinking of you," he'd say, but I sensed a lack of sincerity in his words. Aunt Paula called too, even sending gifts, a luxurious wool scarf that my grandmother carefully stored away, saying, "It's too nice to use." I saw my grandmother smile more during those calls, but her eyes held a trace of doubt, as if she sensed something wasn't right. Then one weekend, the entire family unexpectedly descended on Toma. Me, my parents, Aunt Paula, Uncle Leon, Isabel, and James all crammed into my grandmother's small wooden house. The atmosphere that day was odd. Everyone was laughing, asking after her, but it felt like they were putting on a performance. My father sat beside her, holding her hand, talking about the Europe trip with infectious enthusiasm. "Mom, this is a chance for the whole family to be together. You have to come. It's what you deserve." Aunt Paula nodded, chiming in. "Mom, we want you to be happy. Come with us, please." Isabel and James, my cousins, sat quietly, glued to their phones, barely engaged. My grandmother sat silently, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. She shook her head, her voice soft. "I'm old. My health isn't good. I don't think I can handle such a long trip." But my father didn't give up. He described the beautiful destinations, how the family would be by her side, how this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Aunt Paula joined in, her voice sugary sweet. "Mom, I want you to see the world. You've worked your whole life. Now it's time to rest." I sat there watching her, hoping she'd agree. I wanted her to be happy, to leave that wooden house and see new things. Finally, she looked at me, her eyes gentle. "If Calvin wants me to go, then I'll go," she said, offering a faint smile. I hugged her tightly, my heart pounding with joy. "Please go, Grandma. I'll take care of you," I promised, unaware that I was unwittingly pushing her into a trap. The next day, I overheard my parents whispering in their room. "She transferred the money," my mother said, her voice low, but clear enough for me to hear. "All of her savings." I froze outside the door, a wave of unease washing over me. All her savings. That was the money she had scrimped and saved her entire life from those grueling night shifts, from the meals she skipped to raise my father and Aunt Paula. I wanted to ask, to understand why they took all her money, but I didn't dare. I told myself the trip would be worth it, that she'd be happy. I tried to shake off the discomfort, but it clung to me like a small thorn pricking my heart. In the days that followed, the family buzzed with excitement like never before. My parents discussed the itinerary, luxurious hotels, and famous restaurants. Aunt Paula sent messages to the family group chat showing off photos of Paris from her previous trips. Isabel and James, for the first time, seemed interested, talking about shopping in London. I got caught up in it too, imagining the family gathered together, laughing and talking. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I saw it in my grandmother's eyes when she called me, her voice gentle, but tinged with worry. "Calvin, are you sure this trip will be fun?" I reassured her, saying everything would be wonderful, but I didn't know I was lying, not just to her, but to myself. Sitting in my Tomo apartment now, I can't help but blame myself. I was too naive, too trusting of my family's promises. I didn't see the deceit behind their smiles. Didn't realize that the Europe trip wasn't a gift for her, but a carefully laid trap. But I was about to find out, and that truth would change everything. It would make me see my family in a different light and would lead me to a decision I never thought I'd have to make. In the days leading up to the Europe trip, the atmosphere in our Greenville home became so lively it felt like I was living in someone else's house. Suitcases were packed to the brim. Passports were meticulously checked, and my parents couldn't stop discussing the itinerary. Paris first, then Rome, and finally London, my father said, his voice brimming with excitement, as if he'd been planning this trip his entire life. My mother, usually stern, smiled more often and even bought me a new pair of shoes to look presentable in Europe. I got caught up in it too, forgetting the unease that had once gnawed at me. All I could think about was traveling with my grandmother, seeing her smile happily at famous landmarks I'd only read about in books. My grandmother arrived at our house a few days before departure. She took a bus from Toma, bringing along an old, dark green suitcase, the kind people used in the 70s. When I ran out to greet her, she hugged me tightly, the faint scent of antiseptic from her clothes making me feel safe, like I was back in her house during those summer days. She smiled, saying, "Calvin, let me crash at your place for a few days, okay?" Her voice was warm and cheerful, but I sensed she was hiding something. I helped her carry the suitcase inside, noticing it was lighter than I expected. "Not packing much, Grandma?" I asked, half joking. She laughed, ruffling my hair. "I'm old, don't need much. Having you is enough." In the days that followed, my grandmother and I were inseparable. Every night, I slept in the living room with her on an old inflatable mattress my mother had long planned to throw out. She told me stories about her nursing days, how she always kept a piece of candy in her pocket for the kids in the pediatric ward, and happy memories of my father and Aunt Paula. I lay there listening to her steady voice, feeling like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. "Do you think you'll like Paris or London more?" I asked, my eyes sparkling.